Good evening, everyone. So my name is Evangeline Pardisi, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the president of the UTT SPE Student Chapter. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's session. I'd like to firstly wish all the women on our call a happy International Women's Day. So as we celebrate International Women's Day this evening, our session is based on diversity and inclusion, focused on championing equality, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. And this talk is facilitated by Mrs. Giselle Thompson. So Mrs. Thompson is the Head of Communications and Advocacy and Vice President for Corporate Operations for BP Trinidad and Tobago. In this role, she holds accountability for the corporate functions of communications and advocacy and facilities and management services. In addition to this portfolio, she's also their low-carbon sponsor for the bpTT leadership team. Giselle is responsible for the management of the company's external-facing strategy and reputation. This includes the management of the company's internal and external communications and overseeing all interactions between bpTT and external stakeholders, including the government, business partners, and the community. Giselle first joined bpTT in 2005 as Corporate Brand Manager and was promoted to VP Communications and External Affairs in 2007, and then to VP Corporate Operations in 2013. Prior to joining bpTT, Giselle spent 8 years in the pharmaceutical industry working with GlaxoSmithKline, where she held senior marketing positions in their Caribbean and Central American operations. Giselle was awarded a distinction from the University of Cumbria for her Master's in Business Administration in 2019, and she holds an honors degree in Management Studies from the University of the West Indies and was awarded their Distinguished Alumni Award in 2014. So, Mrs. Thompson, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Evangeline. Everyone's hearing me okay, I hope. And good afternoon and happy International Women's Day to all the ladies on the call. And I'm also really happy to see we have some men among us as well, because I think the talk today is, yes, we will talk about issues with diversity, inclusion in the workforce, with a bit of a slant on gender, but I think, you know, a lot of what I share will be relevant to both men and women as you think about navigating your future careers in energy. So really happy to be with you. Glad we have, you know, a bit of a small group, because I hope you guys are going to come with your questions. These things always work best when they're interactive, when I'm answering what you want to know and learn about and understand more about. So what I plan to do today is share some of my reflections on my career journey, some of my learnings, and then, you know, get to your questions. So feel free, raise your hand or pop your questions in the chat box, or, you know, when finished with, I guess, my opening piece, we'll just open the floor to conversation. So it always works best when we're having a discussion rather than just a one-way talk. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you all. So get your questions ready. Great. So, I mean, when I think back, you know, we are talking here about inclusion, and we'll talk to that, you know, through a couple different lenses. And when I think back about my career journey and my early days at bpTT, I remember very clearly the feelings and emotions of those early days in my energy career. And I'm pretty sure some of these will resonate with you. I certainly remember feeling inadequate, you know, as someone who was quote unquote green to the energy sector, given that my background prior had been in pharmaceuticals. The learning curve seemed pretty steep. You know, and there were many days where I wondered, will I ever get this? Will I really understand how this business and this sector works? It's very complex. It's not just technically complex, it's commercially complex. And there were feelings of being, you know, a bit overwhelmed. And, you know, that's, again, imposter syndrome, you know, setting in. And then definitely as an early career female in a male-dominated industry, I doubted my ability to be seen as a true peer and recognized for what I could bring to the table. And then furthermore, as a non-technical person, given my background sort of in communications and advocacy, as a non-technical person in a highly complex and technical field, I assumed my skills would be less valued. You know, that was some of the assumptions I had going in. And then finally, as a new mother, I joined BP on my daughter's first birthday, my first daughter's first birthday. So as a new mother, I also feared my ability to balance work and family. And I had a lot of concerns about how I was going to do that. And those were really very, I can clearly remember those feelings and emotions. And now I can look back on it, I guess, about 15 years later, and recognize those feelings and emotions as self-limiting beliefs. You know, so what have I learned? And again, this is applicable to both men and women, not just women. What have I learned in those 15 years of working in this sector? And how can I just share some of that with you as we talk about kind of navigating our careers and energy? And this is one of my biggest things, you know, what I've learned is you've got to have a hunger for learning, you know. I know sometimes when you're deep into your studies as you are now, you're dying to get that over with and enter the world of work. And sometimes we feel, oh, it's done, it's over with, now I'm on to my career, but learning never stops. And the best way to get rid of that imposter syndrome or feelings of inadequacy is to learn as much as you can about your field, right? Not just your particular area of expertise, but, you know, broader, you know, how the broader sector works. So in my case, you know, I was confident in my core skill sets, and I'm sure you will be too. But I knew I needed to understand a lot more about the oil and gas business. So I made it my business to go find that out, to go understand it. And, you know, not from reading textbooks or articles, but from sitting with your other colleagues who were more experienced than I was at that time, asking the questions, telling them, you know, explain to me, you know, as a non-technical person, explain to me how a reservoir works. Tell me about why you were designing this well this way. You know, I made it my duty to go and do site visits, to go and talk to our leaders on sites offshore, understand what their daily lives looked like, felt like, understand what they were dealing with, what their concerns were, learn more and more about the business by actually getting out there and doing, asking the right questions. So learning and having that hunger for learning is really important. I've also learned the importance of having confidence in yourself, right? And being deliberate about your personal brand. And I sometimes see women struggle with this a little bit more than men do, right? And you have to do that in a way that's humble, but yet respectful to others. So many times I would see women walk into conference rooms and, you know, sometimes, you know, there are 2 rows of chairs. There's a front row at the table and then there's a back row, and they always gravitate to the back row. And, you know, it starts to question why, you know, sit at the table, you know, participate, ask questions, you know, speak up, have an opinion, challenge thinking and share different perspectives, you know. And that's what I mean about having confidence, you know, not being shy or afraid to have a point of view, to even build on somebody else's point, to recognize someone for something they've just shared, to step out, you know, of your comfort zone. And that's how people get to know you, to understand your, again, points of view, to understand the value you can bring to a conversation or to a decision. They don't get to know you if you sit in the back row and if you don't have anything to say, you know. So always be conscious about how you show up, and do that with confidence and, of course, with humility and respect as well. And speaking about, don't be afraid to step out, you know, of your comfort zone. On the topic of comfort zone, you know, I've learned that if I'm comfortable, I'm not growing. And, you know, if you really want to grow as you kind of work your way through your career, you have got to step out of that comfort zone. You have to put your hand up. You have to offer to get involved in special projects, employee volunteerism initiatives that may be happening in the organization, other initiatives outside of your job. That's how you learn. That's how you develop new skills. That's how you expand your networks and, you know, demonstrate your readiness for that next role. So getting outside of that comfort zone means putting yourself out there, being willing to say, there's this special project I would really like to get involved in. I'm going to talk to my boss about it, and share your ambitions and goals, you know, with your boss or with your mentor, with other people in the organization, and ask for feedback and suggestions on pathways to get there. You know, I always say, many of us are always concerned about how do I get that next job and how am I progressing in my career? Well, you don't get there if you do just what's on your job description. You know, the people who get the opportunities to continue moving up in the organization are those that show the initiative to be willing to get involved in other things. To, yes, this is my job, but I know I can help this team over here, or there's this particular project that I really want to learn about. And that's how you build your networks and you grow and you learn, is, again, to step outside that comfort zone. And then, you know, on the topic of networks, so networks are very important. And I will be the first to admit, as an introvert, that it's hard work, and it sometimes feels tough and it takes effort. But like everything else you do, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. So building your network both within your organization and outside is really important. So, you know, again, you know, join company committees that may be set up, you know, even if it's an HSE committee, if it is a you know, support group. Sometimes they have women in engineering groups within the organization, or other types of specialty support groups. Join those and get involved. That helps you build your networks. Outside of your organization, join trade associations. So as you have done with SPE, or with other NGOs or community groups, the more you expand those networks, you meet different people, you know, they bring value to you. It helps you grow your time, and it helps you also giving back of your time and your skills. It pays to have allies and networks that you can lean on for support. On the topic of allies, I've also learned how important it is to have allies. So you need to forge strong and positive relationships throughout your organization. Seek out those allies in your organization who would champion you and challenge you, and where you can be an ally to others, do that. I know sometimes, again, people may have a different comfort level with seeking out senior leaders and asking for conversation, but many times you would find they're only too happy to sit down with a younger person and talk about, you know, your career goals and aspirations. So don't be afraid to reach out and try and forge those positive relationships across your business. And I would say, you know, my final point is on giving back, right, to others. So remember those who helped you on your journey, and always show them gratitude. And as you climb the corporate ladder, think about how you in turn grow and develop others. They could be your peers, they could be people below you. Reach back and pull them along with you. And as the saying goes, when you have a seat at the table, pull one out for someone else. So when you are in a point, you know, when you're in a position in your career where you can create opportunities for others, do that, right? Because others have done that, will have done that for you. And I think those are some of the learnings that, you know, that I hold dear, you know, the importance of being confident in yourself and your abilities, and finding ways to get over that, you know, imposter syndrome, or I'm not good enough. you know, hunger for learning and continuously improving your skill sets. And now more than ever, there's so much opportunity to do that. Either the way I did it through sitting with others or going to sites and learning, or there's just so much available to you online in terms of learning resources as well to get to improve a skill set in an area that maybe you have not traditionally spent time on. The importance of allies and networks. You need people, right? And people need you. And it's really important that you forge those relationships and take time to nurture them. Not just call on them when you need them, but nurture them even when you don't need them. And I think that's really important in how you progress through your career. And again, comfort zone, right? Always be looking for that next challenge and stretching yourself, getting involved in things that, maybe outside of your direct job is another way that you really learn and grow and move up in your career. And so for me, I mean, those were some of the learnings and reflections that I said, if maybe on my first day on the job, if someone had shared that with me, that would have been really helpful. So hoping some of those insights were helpful to you as well. So Angeline was really great and sent me a couple questions ahead of time, and I can get to some of those. But before I do that, maybe I've just opened the floor to any comments or questions on what I have shared so far. Who's going to be the first brave one?
Hi, evening, Adrian here, Adrian Thomas.
Hi, Adrian.
A question to you. I know, well, from Evangeline reading your bio, she saw that you worked at BP. So I wanted to ask if bpTT has any programs or initiatives, or how do they go about the whole diversity and inclusion in their company, in you guys' company?
Yeah, so we have quite a strong diversity and inclusion program, and continuing to strengthen it as we go along. And while yes, in the initial stages it was very focused on gender diversity, I would say what has become more prevalent now is continued focus on things like race diversity, ethnic diversity, etc. So we just came out of a quite extensive reorganization across the entire group, right? BP, our largest reorganization in 100 years of our history, as the company prepares for that energy transition ahead. So it's kind of making sure it has the right complement of talents to take it forward. And a big part of how we went about that change program was applying that diversity inclusion lens. And to be really clear, it is that we want the best person for the job, right? We want, this is not about meeting targets that we need to have X amount of females or X amount of people of color or things like that. But it is about being really deliberate about unconscious bias and putting systems in place that can look for that and find that. So in all of that re-engineering of the business, we made it really clear, do we have diverse panels, in terms of women, in terms of people from across the globe? Are we only promoting into senior positions, US, UK nationals, or do we have a complement of what we call most of the world, right? The rest of the world, because we are a global organization. And that's applying that D&I lens, really helped to make sure we were shining a light on those areas and making decisions for the company to ensure how we hire, the talent we have, the people we promote into different roles is reflective of the business we are across the world, is reflective of the talent pool that we have, whether men or women or people of different ethnic backgrounds. And I could say the outcome of the change process is a very different looking BP. Both in terms of the senior leadership team and all the way through, first time we're seeing, you know, people from non-US, UK nationals holding senior positions, more females in senior leadership roles and middle management roles throughout the organization. So I would say it does not, you know, diversity and inclusion doesn't happen on its own. Unless you're being deliberate about it, unless you're pushing the boundaries, unless you're looking at your data, you're making the right inquiries, your systems are supporting it, it's not going to happen. So I think that has been one of the biggest learnings, and because there's so much attention on it, we are moving the dial. If we weren't paying attention to it, then I don't think there would be change. And I've seen that even at bpTT. You know, when I started, you know, the leadership team, when I first became a member of the leadership team, I was probably out of 10, one of maybe 4 nationals on the team. It was mostly international, people of non-Trinidadian descent. You know, today we are, it's probably 80% nationals make up our leadership team. Again, you know, the women on the leadership team were a handful, and we were from those softer skill sets or backgrounds, you know, HR, communications, legal. Now we have, you know, 5 women, 6 men, you know, so about 45%. We're almost at parity in terms of our senior leadership team. So seeing that progress, and not just the leadership team, but even the next layer down, seeing much more equity, both gender equity, seeing much more equity in terms of nationals to non-nationals holding those senior roles. And again, that could not have been done unless we were deliberately looking for those opportunities to pull the nationals through, or, you know, those opportunities to say, in a hiring pool, do we have enough women in there? You know, before we even, our candidate slates, is it well balanced? Do we have women, you know, in the interviewing panel, or is it only men? So looking for those areas where unconscious bias could slip in and addressing it is the way that we've started, you know, really seen progress. And I would say we've come a long way. We're definitely not there yet, but I think we've come a long way in terms of getting more balance and more equity into our workforce.
I have one question.
Sure.
So based on your learnings and experience thus far, what are you personally doing to make sure everyone feels included?
Great question. So what I'm personally doing, and it is helped by the fact that we've also moved in terms of how we organize the organization to what's called an agile organization. You can, I mean, there are loads of articles out there on, you know, how are agile organizations different. And I don't mean agile in the sense of, oh, we can adapt. I mean, they're organized for agile. So in other words, instead of that top-down hierarchy you're accustomed seeing with a line manager, teams, you know, span breakers of different managers, traditional organization style, the whole organization is stood up in squads, which, you know, with a squad leader, but the role of the leader is very different. And the role of the team or squad is very different, where we're meant to be self-autonomous. In other words, the team decides the goals, the team decides how it's performing, the team is accountable to each other, and the line manager is there, or the squad leader, more as coach, more as helping to remove impediments, block things that are getting in the way, helping to make decisions faster, versus this top-down drive that the line manager holds the power to all decisions and the team does as he or she says. So that in itself lends itself to a huge amount of inclusion and transparency, you know. So my role is very different now, and how I engage with my team is very different. And it is about making sure the whole team is included in decision making. The whole team understands what everyone is working on. We're collectively agreeing these are the things that we will prioritize and work on, and these are the things that we won't. And a big part of that is that feedback loop. So every sort of 2 weeks, we have a check-in on, so how are things gone for the last 2 weeks? How could we, what went well? What didn't go well? How could we do better? So constantly seeking out that feedback is how I try to be more inclusive. I try to see things that may have been in my blind spot. And also seeking out, you know, the quieter voices in the room, because there are those who may dominate conversations all the time because their personality is that they're always eager to share what's on their mind. And there are others who may have great ideas, but don't feel confident to put them forward. So it's spotting those, understanding your team members, and seeking out that quiet voice in the room. So while lots is maybe going on in a conversation, it's saying to Jill, I haven't heard your point of view on that. So what do you think? You know, sometimes it just needs to be invited in. And it's simple things like that, or techniques like that you can use to get people to feel more comfortable and to make sure we're really getting diverse perspectives. I know, Angeline, you had one question on how, do I have any regrets, and how do I handle criticism? And yeah, this is a key one, and one I learned from one of my mentors and line managers. So first I would say no regrets, just learnings. You know, I'm a strong believer that every experience in life happens for a reason, because it's a teaching moment, it's a learning moment. You may feel bad about a particular outcome, but there's always some value in it for you, in terms of learning and growing, right? And again, you know, if you don't make mistakes, you're not growing. We are human. Not everybody will be perfect all of the time. I think being generous with each other is important. And, you know, even when you are in a leadership position, people look to you and think, well, you must know it all. You must have all the answers. We are human as well. Everyone makes mistakes or may not make the best decisions from time to time. But again, it's how you learn from it and grow. And on criticism, right? This is a really good one. And as a leadership team, we spent a lot of time talking about this at one point in time a few years ago on feedback, you know, how do we encourage people to give feedback? And that people only will give feedback if we create the environment where they feel comfortable to do that, even if for us it feels like criticism. And the most important part of that is that, and even now as your students, I'm sure you get criticism from your lecturers on something you could have done better, or paper you could have written better, or whatever the case is. But the gem in it is to not take it personally, right? So it's, look at it as a learning opportunity to understand the way you could have done better. Criticism usually means there's an expectation that was not met. So try to understand what was the expectation that was not met, and learn how could I have done it better the next time around. So it's put the emotion aside, receive the message. And like I said, as one of my former bosses used to say, all feedback is good feedback. Even if you don't like it, just say thank you, because it's a gift. Even if it's harsh, just say thank you and appreciate that, okay, we may have different points of view, but I appreciate your perspective and I thank you for your feedback. And again, just use it constructively and use it as an opportunity to learn and continue growing.
We have two questions in the chat here.
We have ever faced with a situation where you or a colleague were the victim of sexism or cultural insensitivity, and how did you handle it? I would say yes. I mean, certainly sexism and ageism. When I, first joined BP and early in my career at BP, I had the opportunity to step into, senior leadership roles very early in my career. And as a young female in a very male-dominated industry, I would find that particularly in dealing with Ministry of Energy or members of government or senior members in the energy sector. And maybe some of it, again, was my own self-limiting beliefs, but it felt like I was not taken seriously because they saw me as a young woman. I didn't have gray hair. I, at the time, didn't wear glasses. And I felt like they did not value my opinion or what I could bring. And it took a long time, I guess, for them to recognize me as a professional in the industry, you know, that who knows what she's about, and, you know, is skilled in her area of discipline, and that I felt respected. And I do remember those early days really feeling that both my gender and my age had put, you know, I felt disadvantaged. I felt not viewed as a peer, I would say, in those early days in my career. Has that changed? So I guess my experience has changed because they've now had, you know, 15 years of knowing me. Yeah, I remember even, you know, members of media, we have a love-hate relationship, but, you know, saying, wow, you know, I can't believe you're BP 15 years, you really stuck it out. I remember in your early days, I gave you 6 months. I thought you would no way you were going to make it. I'm like, well, geez, thank you very much for that vote of confidence. But that is what you face. People do judge you. But it's, you know, to have steady grace in how you deal with that and how you forge relationships with them and how they get to know you, and look for those opportunities, whether that's through industry conferences, to have a chat with them on the sidelines of the conference, or to approach them on a talk they just gave and stroke their ego about, that was so wonderful, I learned so much. You know, you've got to find ways to win people over and for them to see you for who you are. And I would say, you know, that still remains a challenge, right? It's something you will face as you get out there into the world of work and you want to establish your own sort of personal brand. How important is diversity and what value does it bring? So again, I think, you know, brings a huge amount of value. There's just so many studies that show, you know, groupthink really does not bring the richness of innovation and solutions to tough problems, right? So, and again, I've seen that play out over the years as we've really focused on diversity and trying to bring people from different backgrounds in and recognize the perspectives they bring and the experiences they bring to that. Because, you know, we don't know it all, right? And I always say that you know, so with my team, for example, I always say, I'm not the customer. I'm not the public that we're trying to talk to. So help me understand what that customer is thinking, feeling, doing. And that makes for better, you know, strategies and delivery of what we're trying to do. So I really think there's huge value in it. And I think over and over people have seen that. And there have been so many studies that show that businesses that thrive are businesses that have much more diverse talent pools, much more diverse boards, much more diverse executive teams, because we all bring something different to the table. Okay, I'm seeing one here from Priya. So I came from Cape and went straight into my degree. So you're there for 2 years. Are there any initiatives that you can join to have the full experience of life in the field itself? And you're one of those shy ones. Great. That's good. So, I mean, I think, and I don't know if it's already part of your degree program, and I know it's tough going out there in the world of work, but trying to land internships. So, you know, whether those are summer internships, whether there's just a special project you try to get into. Many of the organizations in the energy sector are still doing internship programs, or they're still doing graduate development programs. So BP, we do take some interns during the summer period, and we usually would advertise that in the press when we're ready to start interviewing for the interns. And we also have what we call our challenge program, which is a 3-year graduate program. So straight out of university, we would take folks, put them through a very structured 3-year sort of learning development program. And then once they're openings at BP, those challenges then move into permanent roles within the organization. We've had a bit of a hiatus on our challenge program across the last 2 years because we were doing this massive reorganization. So we didn't want to be bringing new people into a business that we were then, you know, scaling back and downsizing and people moving. So we needed to wait a bit for the dust to settle on that. But there are others definitely in the industry that have apprenticeship programs or have internship programs, and I think those are just hugely valuable. And again, even if it's you're doing it not for a stipend or for you know, a salary, but just for the experience to then work side by side with an industry expert. Another great way to do it is through, as you're doing now, you know, SVTT, because you know, understanding some of the things that they may be planning. How can you get involved in, if it's a conference they're putting on, or if it's an opportunity they can open with one of their members on your behalf. So just go in and learn something different. Then, I mean, absolutely look, you know, seek out those opportunities. So any other questions? So maybe I can ask you all a question. So I would say, what's your biggest concern? So you're currently studying petroleum engineering, or you're in the field, you know, some sort of engineering or oil and gas field. What are your biggest concerns?
For me, I would say opportunities. So for students, even in year 2 and year 3, even year 1 as well, creating opportunities, not just from the big companies, but the small companies as well, because I think the main thing that we as students want is really experience, not for the stipend or for the salary, but more just to learn and get that hands-on experience.
Yeah, and I hear you. And I mean, I think sitting in your shoes, I could see that, you know, just understanding, particularly, you know, amplified by the pandemic right now, that, you know, the opportunity for that to get out there in the world and get that experience is really tough. It's even something we're struggling with as a company, to say, you know, how do we onboard new people, or how do we even do interns this year if we can't have them, you know, in our office learning with us, working on a project very hands-on, because that's the experience you want, right? Not more screen time. And we're struggling a bit with that, to be honest. You know, I think the thing to think about is, you know, the pandemic hopefully is for a period of time. How do we just continue to kind of manage through it, do as best as we can, but then be ready to grab the opportunities, hopefully when we come out on the other side of it. Let's hope there is another side of it, to get back out there into the world of face-to-face and experience and working together. And yes, I mean, and that's the thing, you know, the opportunities will be fewer. So then you need to think about, how do I make myself more marketable? How do I have the best looking resume I could possibly have? How do I self-advocate? How do I use my networks, right? You know, using the people in the industry, you know, talking to them, saying, how should I go about trying to get a job or trying to get an internship? So tapping into some of those networks, being part of the SPTT helps you. I mean, you already have that network, you know, just forge some relationships with those members, and, you know, who no doubt will want to help open some doors for you. So I'm seeing here, how do I come out of my comfort zone in pandemic mode? Yeah, and like I said, it's very tough right now to kind of really get out there. And I guess comfort zone could also be just challenging yourself to do something different and learn something different as well, right? So I may be doing my core education of this engineering, but what if I could do an online course in coding or in data and analytics, so that when I graduate, yes, I could be a petroleum engineer. who has data analytics as well. You know, and there's so many things that you can do online with Coursera, with LinkedIn Learning, with stuff like that. How you could come out of your comfort zone, get on LinkedIn, start building your network, publish articles, share your views so that the world gets to know you. What do you think? What do you hold as important? So those are some of the things about, you can start now building a personal brand. You don't need to wait until you get out into the world of work to do that. You know, you can start building that network and sharing your ideas with the world, articles you may think interesting. Because guess what? You know, when employers are hiring, they're looking at your social media profile. They're looking at, you know, is this person active on LinkedIn? Do they have opinions? Do they have, are they passionate about a particular area like renewables or hydrogen or the new economy? Are they passionate about circular economies? Are they, is their Facebook page just partying, or you know? So they do look at that, and those things are important. Even though you think, well, I'm just a student, it may not be important now. It is important. Yeah.
So would you say that, you know, building yourself on LinkedIn is a good starting point for students?
Absolutely, fantastic starting point. Do not underestimate the power, I think, of LinkedIn. And more now, recruiters are moving to LinkedIn. So even BP, we drive all of our recruitment through LinkedIn. We post all of our ads there. We manage the whole recruitment process through LinkedIn. I mean, we may do the newspaper ad because we may have to, the government says, but really where it's driven there. So already having a presence and a profile on LinkedIn and being active, you know, is great. And also, I mean, the knowledge and the exchange of ideas is amazing. You know, I know you as a student, you have to carve out a little bit of your time, but carve out half an hour a day to say, let me go and learn this, or read this article on hydrogen, or read this article on electric vehicles, or, you know, whatever is the latest, greatest on the renewables front, or in, you know, what's happening in the oil and gas industry. That's how you kind of just keep abreast of where things are going. And I think that's really, really valuable. Highly recommend you do that. So what else is on your mind about energy and where that's heading, either in Trinidad and Tobago or globally?
Adrian, again, you asked us the question in terms of our concerns. Just to add to what Evangeline was saying, I think one of I think all of our main concern would be that, given that we're in the pandemic right now and a lot of companies laid off experienced personnel in their companies. So right now, the market, I would say, is saturated with a lot of engineers, so people that have years and years of experience above us, who are now graduating, or students that still pursuing their degrees. So like, it's a bit discouraging, to say the least, to know that before it had all these internships and opportunities and stuff, and now it's like, apart from just competing with each other per se, we have to compete with these experienced person who have 5-10 years more experience ahead of us.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. And every day I say, my God, how hard it is for young people now entering the world of work to find their way, you know, and to get opportunities. And I absolutely feel your, you know, concern. and I could see how that could feel discouraging. I mean, one thing I would say is, you know, if you're in year 2 or in year 3, you have another year to go, another 2 years to go. The thing with the energy sector is that it is cyclical, right? We do go through these waves of laying people off. And I guess I've been around long enough to see these cycles where, you know, we let go and then we rebuild, and then we let go and then we rebuild, right? So there is always that period of renewal, you know, where there are opportunities to bring people in. As well, you know, so don't be too disheartened, I would say. And And, you know, there's lots of opportunity that will be opening, you know, for us in the field of the whole energy transition, and new jobs that may open up, and new fields that, you know, we don't know about today. So it's also, you know, seeking those out, so, or adding to your knowledge sets, you know. So yes, you've done this degree, but then, you know, maybe you spend one more year and you do something on data analytics, you know. So what are the skills we need for the future? Data sciences. We need engineering, yes, you know, but in the broader sense, it's how do you transfer some of that to the renewable space? We need, we'll always need engineers, project managers, what else? Yeah, I mean, people who understand relationships and how to manage stakeholders, all of that, right? So it's thinking that in addition to this skill set that I'm earning through my degree, yes, how do I also bring something else to the table, you know? I know it's tough, but, you know, don't be disheartened. I would say, you know, just keep at it and just think about how else can I add to my skill set. And I know we're almost timing out. So there was, you know, two other things I just wanted to share. And, you know, I think, Evangeline, you had sent a question, sort of any advice for upcoming females and even, you know, male engineers.
Yes.
And, you know, advice, you know, as I would say, as the saying goes, you know, there's no shortcut to hard work, and you all will know that. You know, you've got to put the time in, you've got to invest in yourself, learn and be patient as you progress in your career. So I've seen time and time again the eagerness and frustration, particularly of young graduates who feel, okay, 2 years into the job, I'm ready for my next role and I want a promotion, and they're disenchanted when it's not coming fast enough. But my advice is just be patient and everything in its time, right? And remember, career is not about climbing the corporate ladder. You know, it is about, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg who said, you know, it's navigating your career is like, you know, working through a jungle gym. It's not one way. You know, there are times where you need to move sideways, you need to broaden your experience, you need to move over here and do something I thought I would never do. You know, there were times where BP had engineers running HR. I'm not saying that's the answer, but thinking through the career not as just one way of progressing, which is only upwards, but how you grow and develop laterally as well. I would say to the females, you know, some of the toughest years of your life will be raising your children when you're also trying to progress in your career. Because, you know, like it or not, they tend to happen at the same time. You tend to be getting those career opportunities while you're also growing your family. And it's tough. And there are days that you will want to give up. You know, and the mom guilt is real. But, you know, my advice is do not give in. You know, don't opt out. You know, stick it out is my advice. Stick it out. It does get better. Kids get older. As hard as it is, you know, find your ways of coping. I can tell you that as, you know, a female who has lived that journey, who has had 3 kids while growing in my career. And there are many times when I thought, goodness, I just can't do this anymore. But find ways to make it happen. And I could look back on it now and say, thank God I didn't give up. And I just kept at it. Because there were times when I did feel to give up. There were times when I felt, well, I'm failing as a leader and I'm failing as a mother, and this is just not working. You will have those moments, but just, you know, stick to it. And then I would say to the males, you know, you be a strong partner to your female partners, you know, share in family and parenting responsibilities, celebrate her successes, don't feel intimidated by it or threatened by it, you know. That mutual support for each other is so important. And again, I could not have progressed in my career if I did not have a supportive partner who shared in our family and parenting, you know, responsibilities. That's just so important. And then, you know, never stop learning. I can't say that enough, right? I think I've said that enough. Just keep finding ways to keep your skill set fresh, to learn things, you know. I mean, for example, me as a communicator, you know, a couple of years ago, social media, through everything you learned out of the box. It threw it all out of the box. We just had to learn a new way of reaching who you needed to reach, a new way of promoting, a new way of managing your reputation and issues coming at you 24/7. And you just need to learn, adapt, build that skill set. I hated LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my God, one more thing for me to manage. But, you know, it's dive in, just learn it, try it on, you know, work with it until it becomes more comfortable. And like, that's what I said, just never stop learning, because no matter your profession, there will always be things that are thrown at you that kind of, you sometimes feel, gosh, redundant. Do they even need me again? So how do you reinvent yourself all the time and stay relevant is important. And I can take one last question, because I think we're going till 6, right? And we're at 5:58. So I know concerns having females in the field and not just in the office. And I see that all the time in spades. And again, I've also seen how much progress we've made in this area, right? In the early days of me going offshore, the OIM used to have to give me his room because there wasn't female quarters. And I may have been the only female on the platform. And they didn't have rooms, bathrooms assigned to females, you know, and I just, how far we have come. Now I go offshore, I see so many females out there working, whether they're BP employees or employees of our contractors. More and more females are in the field. And I think it is tougher. It is a tougher environment. The culture is very different to the office culture, where diversity, inclusion, and values and respect is upheld. But in the offshore environments, or sometimes, you know, on the field, I know, you know, it could feel, sometimes it does feel sexist, or it does, you know, the men are not, again, it's unconscious bias. They're not aware of how their actions or their conversations may make females feel uncomfortable. So, but it's not being discouraged by that. It's calling it out when you see it. You know, if there was a situation that made you feel uncomfortable, go and talk to the people involved. You know, the OIM, the site leader, and just say, you know, you may have thought that joke was funny, but I didn't find it was very funny. So just letting you know, I'm not being thin-skinned about it, but just be aware of how sometimes the simple things you say may, you know, impact others negatively. I think the only way to combat that is you have to be willing to have the courage to speak up. Even if you think there may be backlash, even if you think there'd be, well, I'm to this girl, you speak up, you stand up for what you believe in. And that's the only way, you know, we're going to see change. And again, I challenge the men too to say, when you see these things, don't encourage your colleagues in it. You call them out on it, you know, don't play along and laugh at them and, you know, oh, that joke was so funny. You just say, Breads, you know, really, you know, have some respect for the women in our presence. So you may think that's funny, but we don't have time for that here on this job site, you know. So the men also have to have the courage to stand up to their male peers and call out bias when they see bias, and call out inappropriate behavior when they see it. So we all have a role to play in that, right? And but you know, it only changes if we speak up. If in Trinidad, I know sometimes culturally we just keep our mouth shut because we don't want to get a cuss and we don't want to ruffle any feathers, but you can speak up respectfully. So I encourage you to do that, and share, even let people understand, you know, I'm not taking offense. I know you didn't mean it personally, but just saying that, you know, that doesn't go down here with me, you know, and be firm in your stance. So Evangeline, I'll hand it back over to you. I don't know if you had any closing, anything final that you wanted to ask or share.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated the advice, and I'm pretty sure everybody on this call really did. So before we sign off, I just want to share my screen real quick.
Sure.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I am.
Hi. So on behalf of the UTT SPE Student Chapter, we would like to thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for taking the time to facilitate this talk and really enlightening us on diversity and inclusion, and also your learnings and experience thus far. So this will be emailed to you.
Thank you. And it was my pleasure to spend the last hour with you. I hope you got some value out of the conversation. Thanks for your questions. And I wish you all continued success in your studies and as you think about your career, and never stop learning.
Yes. So
and never stop challenging. Great.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining in tonight. Take care.
Okay. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you, Adrian. Bye-bye.
Bye.